Richard Davis tripped. He didn't just trip, he face-planted directly onto the glowing symbols of the ancient gamelin bonding ritual, scattering the sacred ceremonial dust directly into his open mouth. The taste was electric, like licking a 9-volt battery dipped in cinnamon, only amplified 1,000-fold. He sputtered, coughing up motes of shimmering, iridescent powder that seemed to dance in the air. "Oh, come on," he thought, his face pressed against the cool, polished plasteel of the temple floor. This was just perfect. Another cultural faux pas. He'd been warned about the dust. A surge of raw energy coursed through him, starting from his tongue and erupting outwards. His vision swam, the intricate geometric patterns etched into the floor seeming to writhe and pulse with light. He tried to push himself up, but his limbs felt like lead. A strange humming filled his ears, growing louder and louder until it drowned out all other sound. Then, darkness. He awoke to the soft susurrus of filtered air and the gentle thrum of machinery. Cool, pale blue light bathed the room, illuminating walls covered in intricate glowing circuitry. He was lying on a bio bed, its surface conforming perfectly to his body. Strange, vaguely reptilian faces peered down at him, their large, golden eyes filled with a mixture of curiosity and concern. They were gamelin, their scales shimmering with an oily, iridescent sheen. "He is awake," one of them said, its voice a melodic baritone. "Good, the bonding ritual, it seems to have taken hold." A taller, more imposing gamelin stepped forward, her scales a deeper shade of azure, her expression grave. "I am Elder Thala, you have accidentally completed a sacred bonding ritual, human." Richard blinked, trying to process the information. Bonding ritual. "I just tripped and inhaled some sparkly dust." Thala's expression didn't soften. "The dust is a catalyst. Your inadvertent actions have invoked ancient gamelin law. 3 of our most eligible sisters are now bound to compete for your hand." Richard sat bolt upright, ignoring the wave of dizziness that washed over him. "Compete? You mean like a contest for me?" "But I didn't even mean to." "The law is immutable," Thala interrupted, her voice brooking no argument. "For millennia, this ritual has ensured the strength and continuation of our bloodlines. The sisters will participate in a series of trials designed to test compatibility and suitability. The gamelin people will then decide who is the best match." A gamelin female, taller than the rest, with striking emerald-green eyes and meticulously arranged scales, stepped forward, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features. "This is an unforeseen disruption, Elder. Resources will have to be diverted. Political alliances could be strained." This was Arya, the eldest sister. Richard could feel the weight of her disapproval. Beside her, another gamelin female with scales the color of amethyst and a mischievous glint in her eyes leaned in closer, her voice a soft whisper. "Fascinating," she murmured, her gaze fixed on Richard. "I am Lyra. I must admit I am intrigued." Behind them, almost hidden in the shadows, stood a third gamelin female. Her scales were a pale lavender and her eyes, a deep violet, were wide with apprehension. She wrung her hands nervously, avoiding eye contact. Sierra, the youngest, looked utterly overwhelmed. Thala raised a hand, silencing Arya's protests. "The trials will begin at dawn. They will test strength, intellect, and diplomacy. The winner will be deemed the most suitable bondmate." She turned her gaze back to Richard. "This is our way, human. You will abide by our laws." A low murmur rippled through the assembled gamelin. A hulking warrior with bronze scales glared at Richard, his nostrils flaring. "This is an insult, a human defiling our sacred traditions." Another, more elegantly dressed gamelin, with silver scales and a haughty expression, scoffed. "The sisters are wasting their time. No human is worthy." Richard swallowed hard. He was starting to get the picture. This wasn't just a cultural misunderstanding. It was a full-blown societal crisis. He learned that Arya wanted to secure a crucial political alliance for the clan. Lyra sought freedom from tradition and the courage to pursue her artistic dreams. Sierra wanted to find her place within the clan and overcome her crippling shyness. He remembered a fight with his ex, Sarah, back on Earth. Her voice filled with disappointment. "You just can't commit, Richard. You're always halfway out the door." A wave of guilt washed over him. Was she right? As the gamelin dispersed, Arya and Lyra moved to speak privately in a corner of the chamber. "This is absurd, Arya," Lyra hissed, her voice barely audible. "To think that we must compete for the affections of a human." Arya sighed, rubbing her temples. "Tradition is important, Lyra. It binds us, but perhaps this is an opportunity, a chance to forge new alliances, to adapt." Lyra scoffed. "Or to humiliate ourselves in front of the entire clan." Meanwhile, a shadowy figure slipped into the competition arena. The figure deactivated the power grid surrounding the strength trial, causing sparks to fly. The figure then vanished into the shadows. Someone clearly wanted to ensure the trials were not fair. The gamelin elder, his voice resonating with ancient authority, announced, "The first trial will test your physical prowess." A traditional wrestling match judged by the ancient ways. May the strongest prevail. Arya's crest flared with confidence, a barely perceptible ripple betraying her eagerness. Lyra bounced on the balls of her feet, her blue eyes sparkling with excitement. Sierra, however, visibly recoiled, her lavender skin paling slightly. She nervously adjusted the folds of her ceremonial robe, her gaze fixed on the polished floor. In the days that followed, the training grounds buzzed with activity. Arya, with her powerful build and disciplined movements, practiced throws and grapples with unwavering focus. Lyra, agile and quick, sparred with fluid grace, her laughter echoing through the arena. Sierra, however, seemed to avoid the training altogether, spending her time in quiet contemplation near the edge of the grounds. Richard observed the sisters with keen interest, his xenoanthropology instincts kicking into high gear. Arya's style was rooted in gamelin tradition, a rigid and powerful display of strength. Lyra, he noted, incorporated more improvisation, a dance of feints and dodges that spoke to her fiery spirit. Sierra, when she reluctantly participated, favored defensive maneuvers, seemingly more interested in avoiding conflict than dominating her opponent. "Their fighting styles mirror their personalities," Richard murmured to himself, scribbling notes in his datapad. Arya duty-bound, disciplined, Lyra passionate, unpredictable, Sierra hesitant, introspective. The day of the wrestling match arrived, thick with anticipation. The arena, a vast cavern carved into the living rock, pulsed with the energy of the assembled gamelin. As Arya and Lyra prepared to face each other, a tremor shook the ground. Dust rained down from the ceiling. A guttural shout echoed through the arena, followed by the sickening sound of grinding stone. A section of the cavern wall buckled inward, showering the combatants with debris. Sabotage. Panic erupted. Gamelin warriors scrambled for safety as the arena began to collapse. Arya, ever the leader, bellowed orders directing the evacuation. Lyra, quick and agile, helped the injured to their feet. Sierra, initially frozen in fear, snapped into action, using her knowledge of the cavern's structure to guide people towards the exits. Richard, dodging falling rocks, spotted a critical support beam about to give way. "That beam," he shouted, pointing towards the danger. "If that goes, the whole section collapses." Arya, understanding the urgency, charged towards the beam, bracing herself against its weight. Lyra joined her, adding her strength to the effort. But it wasn't enough. The beam groaned, splintering under the strain. Thinking fast, Richard grabbed a nearby length of reinforced cable, looping it around the beam and anchoring it to a sturdy outcropping of rock. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would buy them time. "Everyone, out now," Richard yelled, his voice hoarse. Working together, the sisters and Richard managed to evacuate everyone from the collapsing section of the arena just moments before it gave way completely. The roar of the cave-in filled the air, followed by an eerie silence. Later, as the dust settled, Richard found himself alone with Arya near the entrance to the arena. "You showed great courage in there," he said, his voice filled with genuine respect. "You put the safety of your people above everything else." Arya nodded, her crest dipping slightly in acknowledgement. "It is my duty," she said, her voice low. "The Gamelin people depend on my strength." "But leadership isn't just about strength," Richard countered gently. "It's about making difficult choices, about balancing tradition with the needs of the present." Arya's gaze softened. "You understand more than I thought, Richard Davis." He smiled. "I'm trying." He found Lyra near the edge of the training grounds, practicing a series of intricate acrobatic maneuvers. "You move like a whirlwind," he said, admiring her agility. "Your passion is evident in every strike." Lyra laughed, her eyes sparkling. "I love to fight," she confessed, "but sometimes I wonder if it's enough. My family expects me to be a warrior, a leader, but I have other dreams, other desires." "Don't let anyone tell you what you can and can't be," Richard said, his voice firm. "Embrace your individuality, Lyra. Follow your heart." Lyra's crest rippled with emotion. "Thank you, Richard. You make me feel like I can be myself." He found Sierra sitting alone in the gardens, her gaze fixed on a single, wilting flower. "You were very brave back there," he said softly, approaching her cautiously. "You knew the structure of the caverns and you helped guide people to safety." Sierra shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "It was nothing," she mumbled. "Anyone would have done the same." "I don't think so," Richard said gently. "You have a unique understanding of the world, Sierra. You see things that others miss." "But I'm not strong like Arya," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm not passionate like Lyra. I don't belong in these trials." Richard reached out, gently touching her arm. "Don't say that," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "You have your own strengths, Sierra. You just need to discover them." Later that evening, Richard found himself in the Gamelin library, surrounded by towering stacks of ancient texts. He was searching for information about the bonding ritual, hoping to understand its true purpose. As he scanned the faded inscriptions, he began to notice a recurring theme: the importance of cross-species relationships. The Gamelin, it seemed, had a long history of interacting with other races, and the bonding ritual was often used to forge alliances and promote understanding. Behind a bookshelf, he found a hidden passage. Inside, a single inscription glowed faintly. "The bond is not merely of flesh, but of spirit. It is a bridge between worlds, a key to unlocking the future." As Richard emerged from the library, he overheard a heated argument between several rival clan leaders. They were openly criticizing the Gamelin elders' decision to hold the competition, claiming that it was a waste of time and resources. "This human is nothing but a distraction," one of them sneered. "He is weakening our traditions." Richard noticed that Sierra was standing nearby, listening to the argument with a look of quiet despair. The other Gamelin were subtly ostracizing her, whispering behind her back and avoiding her gaze. Her reluctance to compete aggressively was being seen as a sign of weakness. Later, Arya sought Richard out. Her expression was serious. "What are your intentions, Richard Davis?" she demanded. "Are you truly interested in bonding with one of my sisters, or are you simply manipulating us for your own amusement?" Before Richard could answer, Lyra appeared, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and fear. "My family expects me to win this competition," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "But I'm afraid that I'll never be good enough." Richard, needing a moment to himself, returned to the hidden passage. He noticed a symbol etched into the wall, a symbol he recognized from another xeno-religion he'd studied on a distant planet. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about finding a mate. This ritual was tied to something much larger, something that spanned galaxies. He began to consider that there might be more to the ritual than just a competition for a mate. Perhaps it was a way to forge alliances, to promote understanding between species. He found Sierra sitting alone in the gardens. She was gazing at the stars, her expression wistful. "I feel like I'm just going through the motions," she said softly, without looking at him. Like I'm doing what everyone expects me to do instead of what I actually want. Richard sat down beside her. I know what you mean, he said, his voice low. Sometimes it feels like we're all just playing roles, trying to live up to other people's expectations. He hesitated, then confessed, to be honest, Sierra, I'm not even sure that I want to be bonded to one of you. This whole thing is overwhelming. Sierra finally turned to face him, her lavender eyes wide with surprise. Really? She whispered. You feel that way too? A glimmer of hope flickered in her gaze. For the first time since the ritual had begun, she felt like she wasn't alone. The elder's voice echoed through the grand hall, its crystalline structure amplifying every syllable. The second trial approaches. To prove your worth, you must decipher the riddle of ages, an ancient text that holds the key to our people's past, and perhaps our future. Arya's gaze hardened, her expression unreadable. Lyra tapped a clawed finger against her thigh, a flicker of excitement in her violet eyes. Sierra, however, seemed to shrink in on herself, her scales paling slightly. Richard watched them, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. Later, in the relative quiet of his assigned chamber, Richard stared at the projected image of the riddle. It was a swirling vortex of gamelan glyphs, a language he recognized only vaguely from his studies. Arya, predictably, was already poring over historical texts, her brow furrowed in concentration. Lyra paced, muttering to herself, her hands gesturing as if trying to grasp something intangible in the air. Sierra sat quietly in a corner, a datapad resting on her lap, untouched. Richard ran a hand through his hair. He recognized a few recurring symbols, patterns that resonated with ancient Sumerian and Mayan religious texts. A shiver ran down his spine. Could it be? He sought out Arya first, finding her surrounded by dusty scrolls in the gamelan archives. Arya, he began, I think I might have something. I'm seeing linguistic connections to other xeno-religions, specifically a recurring motif of cyclical destruction and rebirth. Arya looked up, her violet eyes sharp. Explain. Richard pointed to a specific glyph. This symbol here. It's strikingly similar to a Sumerian representation of the underworld. If that's the case, then this riddle might be less about gamelan history and more about a universal cycle of death and renewal. He watched as Arya's expression softened, a flicker of something akin to respect in her eyes. Next, he found Lyra meditating in the palace gardens, the scent of exotic gamelan flora heavy in the air. Lyra, he said softly, I think the riddle is about more than just logic. It's about feeling, about intuition. What does it feel like to you? Lyra opened her eyes, their violet depths swirling with emotion. It feels like a journey, a path winding through darkness leading to a point of intense light. Richard smiled. Exactly. Trust your instincts, Lyra. They might be the key to unlocking this puzzle. Finally, he approached Sierra, who was sitting alone in her chambers, staring blankly at the datapad. Sierra, he said gently, don't give up. You have knowledge that none of us possess. You know the lore, the myths, the legends. What does the riddle evoke for you? Sierra hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. It feels like a warning. A prophecy of something terrible to come. Richard knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. Then that's where we start. What prophecies do you know? What warnings have been passed down through generations? During the trial, as the elder gamelan watched with solemn intensity, Richard began to piece it together. The cyclical destruction motif, combined with Lyra's intuitive sense of a journey and Sierra's warning of a coming cataclysm, led him to a startling realization. The riddle isn't just a riddle, he announced, his voice echoing through the hall. It's a map to a hidden artifact, an artifact that can help us avert the coming disaster. A collective gasp swept through the hall. The elder gamelan's eyes widened in surprise. Arya, ever the pragmatist, immediately took charge. We need to organize a search party. Richard, you said it's a map. Where does it lead? Lyra, her passions ignited, stepped forward. I'll rally the warriors. We'll need protection. This artifact could be dangerous. Sierra, her voice gaining confidence, added, I know the ancient pathways, the hidden routes through the city. I can guide us. As Arya began issuing orders, Richard caught her eye. Thank you, he said softly. Arya nodded, her expression softening. You're resourceful, Richard. I admire your dedication, but don't mistake admiration for anything else. This isn't a game, it's a test. And frankly, your sentimentality is a weakness. She turned and walked away, leaving Richard slightly stung. He found Lyra by the palace gardens, practicing her fighting stances. Lyra, Richard began, I feel like you aren't being honest with the others about how you feel about your passion for fighting. Lyra looked away. It's not something they would understand, Richard. They would tell me to focus on my duties and that my fighting is a waste of time. But is that what you want? Richard asked. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes pleading. No, but I don't know how to change that. Maybe if you were more open and honest with them, they would be more understanding. I hope that you can be more open and honest with me too, Richard said. Later that evening, Richard found Sierra on one of the palace balconies, staring out at the Gamelin city. The spires of crystal and metal gleamed under the light of the twin moons. It's beautiful, isn't it? She said softly. It is, Richard agreed. But I also feel out of place here, like I don't belong. Sierra nodded, her voice barely audible. I know the feeling. I never really felt like I belonged either, even among my own people. These traditions, they're so rigid, Richard continued. I don't know if I can fit in. Sierra turned to him, her violet eyes filled with understanding. I don't think you have to fit in, Richard. Maybe you're here to help us change. As they prepared to embark on their quest, Arya, Lyra, Sierra, and Richard ventured into the city's underbelly. The tunnels narrowed, the air growing thick and heavy with the scent of decay. Suddenly, a volley of energy blasts ripped through the darkness. Ambush! Arya shouted, drawing her energy blade. Rival clan members, their faces contorted with hatred, emerged from the shadows. They were jealous suitors, determined to sabotage the competition and claim the bonding ritual for themselves. In the chaos of the fight, Richard stumbled, a searing pain exploding in his head as an energy blast grazed his temple. He fell to the ground, unconscious. Images flashed through his mind. A past relationship crumbling under the weight of his own insecurities, a fear of commitment that had haunted him for years. I can't do this. I'm not good enough. I'll just end up hurting them. As Richard lay unconscious, the sisters fought with fierce commitment, their combined strength and combat skills a whirlwind of energy and steel. Arya, a seasoned warrior, deflected energy blasts with her blade. Lyra, fueled by passion, unleashed a series of devastating attacks. It was Sierra, however, who ultimately saved them. Remembering a hidden passage from an ancient Gamelin legend, she led the group through a maze of tunnels, evading their pursuers. Finally, they emerged into a hidden chamber, a forgotten sanctuary beneath the city. In the center of the chamber rested the artifact, a crystalline sphere pulsating with a soft inner light. As Richard reached out and touched the sphere, a surge of energy coursed through his body. He saw visions of the Gamelin people facing a cataclysmic future, their cities crumbling, their culture fading, their very existence threatened. He understood, with stark clarity, that the bonding ritual was about more than just marriage or personal fulfillment. It was about uniting the Gamelin people, forging a bond strong enough to withstand the coming storm. The crystal sphere activated, projecting a holographic map of the land. The group realized that their journey was not nearly finished. The map pointed to a distant location, a place where they would find the next artifact, a gauntlet imbued with the power to protect. Later, as they rested in the hidden chamber, Richard confided in Sierra. I saw a vision, he said, his voice shaking. A vision of the Gamelin people facing destruction. I think this ritual is about more than just marriage or bonding. It's about survival. Sierra nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and persistence. I always knew there was something more to it, she said softly. Something important. Richard looked at the sisters, their faces etched with concern and tenacity. We have to work together, he said. Despite the dangers, despite the rivalries, we have to uncover the true purpose of this ritual. The fate of the Gamelin people may depend on it. The air crackled with anticipation. The arena, carved from the living rock of Gamelin Prime, pulsed with the rhythmic chanting of the crowd. Richard swallowed, the ceremonial dust still clinging to the back of his throat, a gritty reminder of his monumental screw-up. This was it. The first trial. The strength trial. Gamelin wrestling. Before him, in a circle of ochre sand, stood Arya, Lyra, and Sierra. Arya, the eldest, her crimson armor gleaming under the harsh Gamelin sun, stood with a stoic confidence that bordered on intimidating. Lyra, clad in emerald green, bounced on the balls of her feet, her violet eyes sparkling with barely held-back energy. And Sierra looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her sapphire blue armor seemed to weigh her down, and her gaze darted nervously between her sisters and the roaring crowd. A horn blared, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through Richard's bones. The chanting intensified. The wrestling began. Arya moved first, a blur of crimson steel. She lunged at Lyra, aiming for a swift takedown. Lyra, however, was ready. She sidestepped Arya's attack with surprising agility and countered with a spinning kick. The force of the blow would have shattered a human ribcage, but Arya simply absorbed it, her armor humming with contained power. Richard, despite his anxiety, found himself fascinated. He recognized the techniques, echoes of ancient Gamelin martial arts he'd studied for years. He murmured almost to himself, Arya favors a Garatok grip, leveraging her opponent's center of gravity. Lyra relies on speed and misdirection, a classic Veilwind style. Arya, hearing him, glanced at Richard, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Lyra, mid-kick, grinned. Intriguing, human. Think you can predict my next move? Before Richard could answer, Arya seized her opportunity. She locked onto Lyra's arm, applying a crushing pressure. Lyra cried out, a sharp, guttural sound, but refused to yield. She twisted, attempting to break free, but Arya's grip was too strong. Richard, his mind racing, saw a pattern. Arya will attempt a shoulder lock, forcing Lyra to submit. But Lyra knows this. She'll use the momentum to flip, breaking the hold and creating distance. He barely finished the sentence when Lyra did exactly that. With a roar, she somersaulted over Arya, landing gracefully on her feet, several meters away. The crowd erupted, their chanting reaching a fever pitch. Sierra, meanwhile, had remained motionless, watching her sisters with a mixture of awe and apprehension. She seemed hesitant to engage, her gaze fixed on the sand. Richard frowned. He could sense her fear, a palpable wave of anxiety washing over him. Arya, breathing heavily, turned her attention to Sierra. Are you even going to participate, little sister, or are you content to let us fight for you? Sierra flinched, her violet eyes widening. I just need a moment. A moment? This is not a game, Sierra. This is our future. Arya advanced, her crimson armor a looming threat. Prepare yourself. Richard felt a surge of protectiveness towards Sierra. He couldn't explain it, but he knew he had to do something. He opened his mouth to speak, to offer some kind of advice, but Lyra cut him off. Hold, Arya, she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. Give her a chance. Let's see what she's capable of. Lyra turned to Richard, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Perhaps our human friend has some insight. Any predictions for Sierra, Richard Davis? All eyes turned to Richard. The chanting faded, replaced by a hushed expectancy. He looked at Sierra, at her fear and uncertainty, and a spark of an idea ignited in his mind. He knew almost nothing about her, but he had a feeling. A feeling about what she was truly capable of. He took a deep breath and said, Sierra is waiting for the perfect moment. She's observing, analyzing. She's not relying on brute strength or flashy techniques. She's looking for an opening, a weakness. He paused, locking eyes with Sierra. And when she finds it, she'll strike with a force you won't see coming. Arya scoffed. Lyra grinned, but Sierra's eyes widened, a flicker of hope igniting within them. She took a step forward, her sapphire blue armor shimmering in the Gamelin sun. What kind of weakness? Arya challenged, her voice imbued with skepticism. Sierra didn't answer. Instead, she focused her gaze on Arya, her expression hardening. The arena fell silent, the only sound the gentle breeze whistling through the rocky spires. Then, with a speed that belied her earlier hesitation, Sierra moved, but not towards Arya. Instead, she lunged towards Richard. Sierra's eyes flared, twin emerald beacons in the dim light of the council chamber. The traditionalists, who moments before had been spitting insults and accusations, stumbled back, their mandibles clicking in stunned silence. A low hum resonated from the nearby Gamelin artifact, a smooth, obsidian monolith etched with swirling, silver glyphs. The trial of diplomacy had been announced only that morning. Richard was tasked with brokering a trade agreement with the Krell, a notoriously stubborn clan dwelling in the jagged mountains to the west. The Krell were infamous for their bizarre bartering practices, valuing intricate song cycles and ancestral dirt above precious metals. Richard cleared his throat, adjusting the translation device clipped to his collar. Elder Council, with your permission, I'd like to propose a trading strategy based on an analysis of Krell burial rituals and their oral history. He gestured to a holographic projection displaying complex Krell genealogies. Their clan structure is deeply intertwined with their economic system. By offering them a curated selection of Gamelin forged tools inscribed with specific Krell ancestor symbols, we can appeal to their cultural values and establish a strong trading partnership. Arya watched him, a flicker of surprise crossing her usually stoic features. Lyra scoffed, her tail twitching impatiently. Ancestor worship. Richard, with all due respect, the Krell respect strength. We should offer them a demonstration of our weapons technology in exchange for their resources. A show of force is the only language they understand. The air crackled with tension as Richard and Lyra locked eyes, their differing approaches clashing. Later that evening, Arya found Richard studying the Krell genealogies in the archive. Your strategy is unorthodox, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Some fear your influence, Richard. They believe you might destabilize our traditions. She paused, her gaze softening. But I admit your perspective is intriguing. You see patterns where we only see chaos. Richard looked up, meeting her gaze. Traditions are important, Arya, but survival sometimes requires adaptation. Meanwhile, Lyra sought Richard out in the training grounds. Forget those dusty scrolls for a moment, human, she said, grabbing his hand and pulling him towards a training dummy. I want to show you something. She demonstrated a series of rapid strikes, her movements fluid and powerful. Afterwards, sitting together, catching their breath, Lyra began to speak of her love for Gamelin art and music, describing the intricate tapestries woven with bioluminescent threads and the haunting melodies played on crystal flutes. Richard listened intently, sharing stories of Earth's artistic traditions, from jazz to Renaissance painting. A shared understanding blossomed between them, a recognition of the universal human and Gamelin need for creative expression. Sierra found Richard sitting alone near the hydroponics garden, the air thick with the scent of alien flora. Richard, she began hesitantly, her voice barely a whisper, I don't know if I can do this. The competition. Arya and Lyra are so strong, so confident. I'm afraid I'll disappoint everyone. Tears welled in her large, expressive eyes, and I can't control my emotions. It's embarrassing. Richard gently took her hand. Sierra, your emotional intelligence is a gift, not a weakness. You have a deep understanding of people, of their needs and desires. That's something Arya and Lyra, with all their strength and confidence, sometimes overlook. Embrace your empathy, Sierra. It could be your greatest strength. The negotiation with the Krell was scheduled for the following day, but before dawn, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as a rival clan, the Vorn, launched a surprise attack on the Gamelin settlement, their heavily armed warriors pouring through the perimeter defenses. Their target, Richard. They're trying to kidnap you. Arya shouted, drawing her plasma blade. They want to disrupt the bonding ritual. Richard, despite his lack of combat training, remained remarkably calm. This way, he yelled, remembering the schematics of the settlement he had studied. I know a series of hidden passages that lead to the emergency evacuation tunnels. He led the sisters through the winding corridors, his voice echoing in the darkness. As they navigated the maze like tunnels, Sierra suddenly stopped, her brow furrowed in concentration. Wait, I sense them. Vorn warriors. They're waiting in ambush just around the next corner. Her eyes glowed faintly as she focused, her emotional sensitivity allowing her to perceive the attacker's intent. Richard, trusting her instincts, quickly diverted the group down a narrow side passage, narrowly avoiding the ambush. The Vorn warriors, caught off guard, roared in frustration as their prey slipped away. Sierra's ability had saved them. They finally reached the emergency evacuation tunnels, but not without cost. A Vorn warrior, wielding a vibro axe, lunged at Richard, but Arya intercepted the blow, taking the brunt of the attack on her shoulder. She cried out in pain, collapsing to the ground. Arya. Richard knelt beside her, examining the wound. It was deep, but not immediately life-threatening. Go, Arya gasped, her face pale. Get to safety, I'll be fine. But as Richard helped her sit up, he noticed something. A small, hidden compartment concealed beneath a loose panel in the tunnel wall. Inside, nestled in protective padding, were ancient Gamelin texts, bound in shimmering metallic thread. He quickly scanned the documents, his eyes widening in disbelief. The texts detailed the true, deeper purpose of the bonding ritual, not as a mere competition for power, but as a cooperative effort to unite different Gamelin clans and share resources to save them from their dying planet. The ritual was meant to foster understanding and collaboration, not rivalry and conquest. This changes everything, Richard murmured, his voice barely audible. The bonding ritual, it's been twisted over time. It's not about choosing a mate, it's about saving your people. He shared his discovery with the sisters, explaining the true meaning of the ritual and the importance of cooperation. Sierra listened intently, her eyes shining with renewed hope. So, she said softly, my bondmate isn't just about choosing one of us, it's about helping all of us. A vision flashed through her mind, a future where the Gamelin clans worked together, sharing their resources and knowledge, rebuilding their world and creating a thriving civilization. A future where her unique abilities were not a weakness but a strength. But their moment of hope was shattered by the arrival of a group of Gamelin traditionalists, their faces contorted with anger. You. Their leader spat, pointing a trembling finger at Richard. You are corrupting our culture. You are leading us down a path of destruction. Sierra stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. That's not true. We need to change, to adapt. If we cling to the old ways, we will all perish. As she spoke, she instinctively reached out and touched the obsidian monolith they had brought with them from the council chambers. The monolith, a relic of the ancient Gamelin civilization, began to resonate with her emotions, emitting a powerful wave of energy that pulsed through the tunnel, stunning everyone in its path. And as the energy washed over Sierra, something within her shifted. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, now with a power none of them had ever witnessed before. The ground trembled, not violently, but with a low, guttural vibration that resonated deep in Richard's bones. Dust rained down from the settlement's intricately carved ceilings, and a collective gasp swept through the assembled Gamelins. Sierra stood frozen, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror, the ceremonial dust swirling around her like a miniature nebula. She clenched her fists, her knuckles bone white. Richard, instinctively, reached for her. Sierra, breathe, he urged, his voice calm despite the tremor that now threatened to topple the carefully balanced structures around them. He recalled an obscure passage from a Gamelin creation myth, something about channeling emotional energy through specific hand gestures. Try focusing on something stable, something you want to protect. Sierra squeezed her eyes shut, her brow furrowed in concentration. Her hands began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, mimicking the ancient Gamelin symbols Richard had spent years studying. The tremors lessened, then stopped altogether. A soft blue light emanated from her hands, bathing the settlement in a calming glow. The dust settled and the air grew still. The onlookers gasped, not in fear but in wonder. Sierra wasn't destroying, she was stabilizing. The light intensified, and Richard realized she was reinforcing the very structure of the settlement, channeling the raw energy into the ancient stones. Arya stepped forward, her usually stoic face softened with awe. Lyra followed, her eyes shining with understanding. The ritual. It wasn't just about choosing a mate, Arya said, her voice hushed. It was about unlocking this power. A power to guide us, Lyra added, her gaze fixed on Sierra, to heal our world. Later, as the Gamelins celebrated Sierra's newfound control, Richard sought out Arya. He found her standing on a balcony overlooking the bustling settlement. "Arya," he said softly. She turned, her expression unreadable. "Richard, the choice. It is hers to make, not yours." Richard nodded. "I know, and I respect your strength, Arya, your leadership. Thank you for your guidance, for showing me your world." He paused, "But my heart, it belongs elsewhere." Arya's lips curved into a faint smile. "I understand, Richard. Go, fulfill your destiny." He found Lyra in her workshop, surrounded by vibrant tapestries depicting Gamelin history. "Lyra," he began, "your art. It's more than just decoration, it's a way to connect, to inspire." Lyra looked up, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "You see my soul, Richard, but I am not the one for you. Your passion, your spirit, it's a gift. Use it to unite the clans, Lyra. Inspire them to work together." Lyra smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile. "I will, Richard, for our people, for Sierra." Finally, he found Sierra near the ancient ritual site, gazing at the stars. He sat beside her, the silence stretching between them, comfortable and profound. "Sierra," he said, taking her hand, "you are extraordinary, your empathy, your compassion. It's what the Gamelins need. It's what this world needs." Sierra squeezed his hand, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "But I'm so scared, Richard. I don't know if I can do this." "You can," Richard said, his voice filled with conviction. "I believe in you, Sierra, and I'll be right here by your side every step of the way." The next day, before the assembled clans, Richard stepped forward. "The bonding ritual," he announced, his voice echoing across the plaza. "It's not just about choosing a partner, it's about unity. It's about a leap of faith towards a hopeful future, and I choose Sierra." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Then Richard continued, his voice gaining strength. "But I propose something more. Instead of a single leader, let the Gamelin clans form a council. A council guided by Sierra's emotional intelligence and my diplomatic expertise. A council that represents all of us." Sierra, emboldened by Richard's unwavering belief in her, stepped forward. "We have been fighting amongst ourselves for too long," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Our planet is dying. We must work together to save it. We must share our resources, exchange our cultures, and heal our world." The traditionalists, witnessing Sierra's genuine compassion and the undeniable power of her words, began to waver. The rival clan leaders, impressed by Sierra's vision and Richard's diplomatic skills, exchanged glances. One by one, they knelt, pledging their allegiance to the council. A new alliance was forged, based not on dominance but on mutual respect and shared goals. Under Sierra's guidance, the Gamelin people began to implement sustainable practices. They harnessed their unique connection to nature, revitalizing the dying ecosystem. Slowly, but surely, the planet began to heal. Barren lands turned green, polluted rivers ran clear, and the air filled with the sweet scent of blooming flora. Richard and Sierra stood together on a high plateau, overlooking the revitalized landscape. The setting sun cast long shadows, painting the sky in hues of orange, purple, and gold. "We did it," Sierra whispered, her voice filled with awe. "We did," Richard replied, his arm around her shoulders. Together, a new gamelan tradition emerged. The accidental ritual completion was celebrated as a catalyst for change, a testament to the power of unity and acceptance. Richard was honored as a bridge between worlds, a symbol of human ingenuity and empathy. Sierra was hailed as the architect of their future, a leader guided by compassion and wisdom. Richard and Sierra looked out at their intertwined future, ready to meet it together. They knew challenges lay ahead, but they were confident they could overcome anything, armed with the knowledge that love, acceptance, and collaboration were the keys to a brighter tomorrow. The accidental ritual, the unexpected connection, had saved a world.